It's 7 o'clock on Monday, May 13th, 2013. Let me call the Boothbay Harbor Selectmen's meeting to order. A new board, so we'll start with the introductions. We have Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, Tom Wooden, town manager, J.D. Warren, Russ Hoffman, I'm Bill Hamblin, Denise Griffin, and Robert Spillane. And we have in the audience the chair of the planning board and our financial officer. And I think that's it for town officials. Our first order of business tonight, as we start the new year, is to elect a new chair and vice chair. And so I would entertain nominations.
I nominate Bill Hamblin as chairman of the Board of Selectmen of Boothbay Harbor.
Second.
Any other nominations? Seeing none. Any discussion? All in favor? It's a vote.
Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you. Condolences. I nominate, the next is for vice chair, and I would like to nominate Robert Spillane as vice chair.
Do I have to sit next to you?
I don't think that's a requirement.
I second that.
Any other nominations? Seeing none. All in favor? It's unanimous. So now we have an old chair and a new vice chair.
That seems to be the wrong way around. So.
It does. It does. The next order of business is approval of the minutes of our April 22nd, 2013 meeting. I would accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 22nd, 2013. Any discussion? The only thing I noted is this, we actually suspended that meeting and reconvened it on the following Thursday, and we need the minutes from that following Thursday. Kelly, you weren't there, but perhaps, Tom, you can.
I'd have to recreate them, but yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, we were in executive session, and then we came out and voted to approve the lease. So
It would make the minutes fairly easy.
yeah, I think the minutes are fairly easy, but we need to do that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Any other
You all have copies of those?
It was an obvious question.
Yeah, they were distributed by email, which you probably, before you
Before
got there.
Okay.
And since you weren't at these meetings, you probably shouldn't vote on these
Right,
minutes
I
anyway.
shouldn't vote on those.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, that'd be great.
No, just to note that that meeting was suspended
Yes.
in order that we discuss the fish pier lease. So,
Yeah, it's-
which was duly done.
Right, and it's correctly noted that the meeting was suspended. We just need the one or two sentences of the concluding meeting. Any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. The next order of business is financials, and I'll turn the floor over to Julia Latter.
Total revenue, $6,842,930. Total expenses, $6,505,295. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue or expense sheets this evening? As you can see, we've received 93.9% of our budgeted revenue compared to this time last year of 90.1%. So we're a little ahead on our revenue. And we've been billed 89.3% of our budgeted expenses compared to this time last year of 80%. Which this is a 3-week warrant. And your sheets this year show they're a little, not inflated, but they show pending activities. So whatever's being paid tonight, which is a warrant of $431,972, is already showing up on your expense sheet. So
10% is a significant difference. Is that maybe the school budget that
there,
didn't get
the
in last
school
year
is
at
on
this time?
tonight, and the
Yeah.
hydrant, and
Some big ticket items.
ticket items tonight.
Okay.
And the bank balance is $2,881,343.
Nearly exactly what we had last year at this time.
Yeah. Actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Looks like we're on the lines.
Any other questions for Julia? Seems like we're on track.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia. That brings us to town manager announcements. I'll turn the floor over to Tom.
Thank you. I have a form here that was submitted to us. I think I put copies of it in your mailboxes, or at least sent out an email to that effect, where Central Maine Power is requesting to put in some additional poles on Oak Point Road. And I've had Jody go down and take a look at it. It's within our right of way, and we have no problem with it. So I would ask the board, if the board would vote to sign the permission from the municipality for them to put in additional poles on Oak Point Road.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the telephone pole installation on Oak Point Road. Any discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
I would also ask the board to reschedule the next meeting, which falls on the 27th, which is a holiday, to the Tuesday of the 28th. I don't know if you need to vote on it, but maybe you just say
Yeah,
that.
so moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay,
All right, so we'll be meeting on the 28th.
correct.
Done.
Okay. Another item I wanted to bring up was the Historical Society funding. At town meeting, it became aware that the Historical Society was under the impression that they had submitted a request for funding, which they may have, but it did not get to me, so therefore it was not considered through the budget process. And the Historical Society is something that we fund every year, and I would think it might be in our interest to proactively do something to fund the Historical Society. So I wanted to bring that up and get your thoughts on that.
How much are they asking?
$2,000, just like we do every year. Yep.
I just think I agree with you. I think we need to move forward with this. So it's just a matter of process. Do we have to have a special town meeting? Because I talked to one of the board members, and they don't really want us to waste the expenses of the town just to have a town meeting for a $2,000 warrant item. And I don't think they need the money right away. I think they could wait several months. So, but I think that's my only question, process.
I think we could make a decision for the 2,000, can't we?
I think you could out of the Employee Resident Appreciation Fund that you have.
Yeah, we have money in that,
It's okay by me.
so.
What fund were you thinking of?
The Employee Resident Appreciation, that would be one.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the money, it's not the issue, it's a matter of accounting.
I realize that.
Yeah.
And apparently there was an administrative mistake on somebody's part.
Could have been, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying
Yep.
that we did it, or
Right.
that they did it, but certainly, as you say, it stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and I'm sure we would have put it on the warrant if we had gotten that.
So that, it normally would have been
Oh,
in
yeah.
the budget?
It
and
is
on
every
the-
year,
Yeah.
yep.
I see.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, they ask every year, and we normally vote on it, or at least the budget committee, whose chair is present, Mr. Kane, and the board of selectmen vote
Right.
on two separate budgets. This year, they were essentially the same.
Agreed on everything. Yep.
So I think we would have all approved the bill, but that's wishful thinking. If there's a fund that we could draw from, I would recommend we do so.
I can certainly do that with the board's approval.
I do
So did I
too.
hear a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
You hear a motion that we should pay, we should make a sum of money equivalent to their usual request of $2,000 to be withdrawn from one of the administrative accounts that we have money available, that sum of money available in. And I'll leave that to the discretion of the financial officer and the town manager. That's my
Second,
motion.
second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
I see on the agenda that went out Friday, you have fish pier status on here. I can give you an update as of today. The red building is no longer there.
Yay.
The fish pier.
Ooh,
We are waiting at this point to get insurance information from Skip Rideout before we proceed with the rest of that flat deck concept in that area. You will see an ad in the paper this week. Jeff has submitted one, just saying that this notification. It's that we are going to file an application with the DEP for a NERPA permit. We have to do that 30 days before we actually file the application. We're working very closely with Chuck to get details of where the building's going to be, size, drawings, and so forth. That's progressing very well. We have drawings, which I'd be glad to show you at some point here, that show the building to scale right in the area we're talking about. And conversations that we've had with the DEP, it sounds like it's a fairly clean process. It could take as long as 120 days, but the way it's being presented to them, they think it would take considerably less time than that. And fortunately, Chuck is not, in a great rush to have the building done right away. So, so far.
That's separate from the floodplain
Yep,
requirement.
right, and we're checking on that too.
Okay.
To see if that's going to change our insurance, and if we do indeed
or-
have to raise the building.
Raise the
Being
building.
special construction.
Right.
That would be the issue.
Right, so we've got a lot of things going on at the same time, and
Okay.
that's one as well. So, I'm open to questions on any other stuff you have
Do
for
we have the quotes for the cooler?
No, but I talked to Chuck this morning about it, and he said we probably would by today.
The ink still went on them, but do you want to talk about this now?
Sure.
Or?
Sure.
Sure.
So we've got I originally had the three quotes. One of them was $100,000 more than the other two, so I did not.
So you picked that one.
I've got 2 copies of each if you want.
He's the guy who should really.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
definitely need a copy.
Yeah, I'll give you a copy.
Unfortunately, I can't at this point tell you which one we should go with. It's a smaller cooler size.
That's the other one.
66,000 is the low price, but that's for a much smaller compressors. And to be honest, I just haven't had a chance to research it.
That's fine.
It was 10 and 7.5 from more expensive company, horsepower, 10 for the cooler and 7.5 for the freezer, 3 and 5 for the less expensive company. So a significant difference.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to be able to tell you right now, this is the one I want.
Yeah.
This is the best value, I can't do that.
Let's
And I
do it
don't-
right.
I don't know how we proceed. I'm hoping we won't have to wait another 2 weeks before we can place the order. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do.
I think that's the way we have to do it. Do you know, I don't offhand know of any way around.
No, the board would have to vote for that, yeah. I mean, it's possible that there's always the idea if you could hold a special meeting for that couple of weeks. If you know in the next few days exactly what you're looking for, I think it would probably behoove us to call a special meeting just to take that vote and keep that process going, because I would agree with you. Every week probably makes a big difference if you don't have this.
We're getting close to the busy season. We've got the trailer there, temporary trailer.
Right.
But, we can hold 150, 170 barrels.
Yeah.
That's not.
Well, proceed with the evaluation. When you have the answers, get to Tom, and we'll see where we are in that 2-week cycle, and we'll go from there.
I literally got the second one at about 10
No.
after 5.
Believe me, I understand.
And there's still a third one from a totally different supplier.
Yeah.
So I think
We should get
I think
that.
it's in our best interest to just hold on.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you, Chuck.
I understood from Jody that the choice of contractor, Elton Jordan, was excellent in taking down the red building, that he was able
Great
to
job.
do it with an extensive amount of recycling and very little garbage that went to the refuse district or whomever it goes to. So it was apparently a good job.
Yeah, he has done a very good job.
I went over and I kind of observed what they're doing. They did an excellent job. They kept things steadily going and the trucks there. And I thought they did a beautiful job removing that building.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks a lot different over there at the
It
moment.
does. It makes a
Sure
big
does.
visual difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question while we're kind of still on the subject? So, because I've been out of this for a couple of years. I know what the original plans were, but one of my concerns as a resident of the east side was that frequently Reingart's truck was parked very close to the road or maybe slightly encroaching in the road. So with the new plans, will that kind of be alleviated?
Yeah, we've taken that into consideration, and I'd be glad to show you the drawings at some point.
Okay.
But that truck loading and unloading zone now would be on the replacement part of the pier, which Skip has yet to do. But that's being built to the heavy standards that Proc built on the north side of the pier, on the other side of Atlantic Edge. So that would be able to handle that particular truck. So we're not going to have them out by the street. It would be backing down alongside, parallel to the building, off the street. And out by the street would be parking instead. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, we've
Yeah.
taken that into consideration.
In fact, the white building is going to disappear,
Right.
so
White building's coming down.
it's coming down shortly. Well,
Soon. Yep,
Soon,
soon,
soon.
yeah. Unless you have
Can I
other,
ask another
Please.
question, a
Sure.
background question?
Please.
Was there a spec that these guys were bidding on? Is that,
Size and, no, not, you mean horsepower, compressor
yeah,
horsepower?
you mentioned the difference in compressor size.
They would provide those specifications themselves, but I think that's part of the equation.
You were looking for volume of cooler performance?
Right, I provided the size of the cooler and the
And
freezer,
Temperature range.
temperature
and that
range.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Same information to all of them.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
so
You have a marine expert on board?
you did ask for a guarantee of performance, I'm sure. Technical performance is what I guess you're asking for. But
That's kind of what I was asking.
if you're looking for a 55-ton cooler or something, that's what you
Right.
expect to get.
Right.
And then the person that I was going to have review them to see, you know, to really look at it closely, said, well, I want to submit a bid too. So we need to review them further for, you know, I don't think low price is necessarily going to be the best deal.
The town specifically is allowed to acquire best value, not necessarily low price, so we'll be looking at that. Anything else for Tom?
I think that's all I have unless you have other questions.
I had a question, and help me out with my memory. I think 2 or 3 meetings ago, we talked about updating the town website, and you said you were going to have a meeting, and that they had a tool that would allow us to provide some of the updates.
Right.
How's that going?
Well, very, very slowly, to be honest with you. I mean, the last I heard from Gary, he was working with all of the businesses that are opening the restaurants, all of his paying customers. And he
Okay.
said he would get to us as soon as he could.
Right.
That was probably 3 weeks or
Well,
so ago. Yep.
Let me just, stick another bee in your bonnet, that I really like the idea of us having a tool to keep that updated so that it doesn't get so far
Yeah,
behind.
we
So
will do that. Yep.
when the spring crush backs off, let's get on it and get that tool
Will do.
and get people trained in it.
Yep.
Thanks. Anything else for tonight? That brings us to public hearings. And we have numerous liquor, special amusement, and victular licenses. In fact, we have 61 victular licenses. Let me suggest we do the special amusement and liquor licenses first, and then we'll do the victualers licenses by class. I think would be the fastest way through these. Under liquor licenses, we have 2 applicants, Boothbay Lobster Wharf, Lincoln Bay Resort. They are both renewals. They have both been initialed by the police chief, and I would entertain a motion to take these as a group.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take these as a group. Any discussion? All in favor? So we're taking them as a group, and now I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the liquor licenses for Boothbay Lobster Wharf and Lincoln Bay Resort. They are both for malt, spiritus, and Venus, all 3. That's a restaurant. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. The special amusement license is for the Boothbay Harbor Yacht Club and for Timothy Hodgson under the Shipyard Cup LLC. They're for special amusement licenses. They include unamplified music, amplified music, and dancing in one case, and unamplified music for the Shipyard Cup.
I move we take them as a group.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we take them as a group. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
I move we approve the group.
I'll
Second.
that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve these as a group. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. All right, now we have our vitulers licenses. The first group that I suggest we, is it acceptable to the board to take these by class?
I would take Class B and C together. I move
All
we
right.
take Class B and C together, if you need to read the list.
I will just briefly read the list, but it has been moved and seconded that we take B and C as a group. The B licenses are Circle K, Gimbel & Sons, Hannaford's, Oak Street Provisions. The C licenses are Downey's Candles, Downey's Ice Cream Factory, Hometown Convenience, Orange Candy Store, Sarah Scoops, and the Curtis House. They're a total of 10.
I move we approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve these. Any further discussion? These are all renewals, by the way. All in favor? They pass.
I move we take Class D, Class E, and Class F together.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take Class D, E, and F together. That's a total of 17 establishments. Very briefly, Wanawaf, Opera House, Admiral's Quarters, Bayberry House, Bayside Inn, Blue Heron, Seaside Inn, Bridge Street Cafe, Captain Sawyer's, Deli's at Pier 1, Greenleaf Inn, Harbor House Inn, Harvard Inn, Howard House, Nana's Place B&B, Pond House, Sir Lemaire Inn, and Topside Inn.
I move we approve this group of 17.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this group of 17 victualers licenses, Class D, E, and F. Any discussion?
Can I just ask
Yes, please.
what the difference in classes?
I thought you'd never ask. Class B is incidental, food prepared for and sold in a retail outlet whose primary business, as evidenced by proportional floor space, is other than as a victualers. Class C is a specialty, single item or items sold to the public, bakeries, ice cream shop, candy shops, for on-premises consumption for a maximum number of 10 persons. Class D is takeout, cooked food sold for consumption on or off premises or through an open-air outlet. Class E is cooked food prepared outside and consumed on premises. Class F is a facility serving breakfast, lunch, or both for on-premises consumption. And while I'm on definitions, Class G is a full facility serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner for on-premises consumption. Class H is a facility serving at least one cooked meal per day, which is also licensed to serve malt, Venus, or spirituous liquors for on-premise consumption. And the last one is Class I, which is snack bars and movie theaters. And you can guess who's the applicant there.
Nice.
So
Thank you.
we have before us Class D, E, and F, 17. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries.
Yep.
I move we take Class D together.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take Class G as a group. All in favor? Motion carries. Class G includes Baker's Way, Captain Fish's Motel, Dockside Grill, St. Andrews Healthcare Coffee Shop, St. Andrews Village, and the Village Market Harbor General Store.
I move we approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Class G. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. We now have 28 in Class H
And one in Class I,
and 1 in Class I.
which I move we take as a group.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take Class H and I as a group. All in favor? Passes. The list here is Amore Bistro, Andrews Harborside, Bistro LLC Boathouse, Blue Moon Cafe, Boothbay Harbor Inn, Boothbay Harbor Yacht Club, Boothbay Lobster Wharf, Brown Brothers, China by the Sea, Charter House, Ebb Tide, Fisherman's Wharf Inn, Gallery Gatherings and Events, Hot Tamale, House of Pizza, Kaler's Crab and Lobster House, Lincoln Bay Resort, Mama D's, McSeagul's, Mine Oyster, Mr. Caterers, parentheses, Mr. C's, Ports of Italy, Red Cup Coffee House, Rock Tide, Spruce Point Inn, Resort and Spa, Tugboat Inn, Welch House, Whale's Tail, and in Class I, the Harbor Theater.
I move we approve group H and I.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve classes H and I. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? We carry. Well done. That brings us to the first public forum, and I'll turn the floor over to anybody in the audience who has a question, comment, observation. Mike?
Mike Tomko, Boothbay Harbor. This is celebration news. I'd like to make the official announcement, if you haven't heard it already, that on April 29th, the Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission awarded the Boothbay Harbor Walkability Workshop Group a $2,000 grant. And that's going to be used for what was applied for in the grant application, which is to do a visioning process, and then also to do work with a design marketing professional to develop a brand concept, logo, construct something for the region. So this is outstanding news.
Excellent.
With the money from the town gets us off and running.
Excellent.
Great. The other thing was, I was looking, is there an update, and this may be for Tom or Bill, on the Boothbay Harbor sidewalk meeting? Do we have that rescheduled? I know that I've spoken with Jim Chaosis, and he's eager to
Yeah,
address you guys.
you relayed that to me, and I relayed that to Tom, and Tom and Jim have been working together to schedule a meeting. I don't know if we have.
I'm waiting on Jim when he can do it. So I
Okay.
invited him to one of our meetings, and he said he'd get back to me.
Okay, I just spoke to him tonight, he's ready, so
Okay.
I guess, I don't know where it goes from there. Okay, thank you, congratulations again.
Well, congratulations on the 2K grant, that's wonderful. Anybody else on their first public forum? Palmer?
I'm sure at the end of the town meeting, we all breathed a collective sigh of relief and said, thank goodness that's over. And actually, your work was really beginning right now. And I'm primarily focusing on the ambulance service situation, which is almost since its inception been plagued by a shortfall of incoming cash. The thought that it's a voluntary donation by the town is debatable. It's more of a demand payment. It, within the past 2 or 3 years, approached the point where they threatened not to serve the town unless they got the money that they wanted. Is that correct, Tom?
I don't recall them threatening us, but I know it's a pretty tough option not to pay.
Well, we had a
ambulance
conversation once, and what you said, we can't get along without an ambulance service, and I said, well, maybe we can get along without this one if that's their attitude. The point being, they have a serious problem. I have been appointed by the Board of Selectmen as our town's representative on their budget committee, and I'm fully aware of their problems. They seem to have the basic problem of not enough business. You may have learned in the past 3 or 4 weeks that Delta Ambulance, which serves 17 communities north of here, Augusta, Waterville, and 15 others, charges none of those 17 communities anything. They do not ask for a dime, and they work out quite well. They also say that they require 2,000 runs a year to support one ambulance and its crew. Boothbay Harbor Ambulance Service is running 3 ambulances, and last year they had 1,100 calls, which is barely over 50%. I would hope that you folks individually or collectively would explore how other places such as Delta to the north of us, Northeast, Mobile Health, which operates headquartered in Brunswick and Topsom to the south of us, manage their operations. It, to me, seems to be a no-win situation because of the fact that there isn't enough business. And you can be sure that if Hannaford's income were suddenly impacted by a shortfall in customers, you wouldn't see the store there. It's a business proposition. It's unfortunate. But I would hope that somebody would explore with these other ambulance services how they operate and how they manage to do so. I think that there's a 2-tier situation with Delta because they actually serve 29 communities according to their website, but 17 of them require no infusion of taxpayer money. but it's gone along for a long time. As Jay Warren will tell you, who was one of the original true volunteers with the ambulance service, it was rough in the beginning. They asked the town for a subsidy in the first year and promised thereafter never to ask for any money. And it's gone from 0 to $161,000 over the years. This is not to criticize them, they are in a bind. They need to pay their personnel. Whether they have enough business or there is some other way, I don't know, and I don't profess to have any background. But I would think that as officers of the town of Boothbay Harbor, one or some of you could go to these other, and present the problem and see if they have any suggestions for you.
I did. I went to Central Lincoln, and I went to the other towns when I was doing research when we was in the budget committee, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked when I found out that the other towns was paying a lot less and getting the same amount of coverage with the ambulance service. Like Central Lincoln, they cover, don't quote me, around 18 towns. And I have, at home, I have all of the statistics on how much the towns pay. Like Damascotta,
Oh, yeah.
Newcastle, all them do not pay anything like we do.
Well, I understand you did, and it was good work on your part.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to focus on is that perhaps these two successful businesses, that does not mean that they're profiting, but they're at least able to meet income versus cost, may have some suggestions that could be applied to our circumstance to find out.
I think it would be appropriate in that at the discussions that we held as a budget committee and as a board of selectmen, certainly Lincoln County Healthcare made some significant sum of money available to offset the increased cost of the ambulance. And that won't necessarily stay for any more than perhaps this year. The amount that we're looking at is fairly significant, as you know. In previous years, it's risen from a budgeted amount of about $40,000 to this year, I think we're around $190,000. And that's a significant chunk of money, especially when you relate it back to things like the communications effort that we spend a lot of time as boards reducing that situation to an alternative, which everyone said wouldn't work, but in fact works much better than it ever did in the past. I believe that shortly after the budget meetings, there were several articles published in the Portland Press Herald, two that I draw attention to. But the last one certainly talked about the number of calls. Our number of calls is around 1,150, I think, in the last year. And the president of Delta, when he was interviewed, suggested, as you have just mentioned, that he serves 17 communities with no subsidy, and apparently they do a good job. And I'm just paraphrasing what was said by the Portland Press Herald. If that's the case, I'm sure that we should, and I would recommend that we ask the town manager to see if he can arrange a meeting between the responsible parties at the Delta Ambulance Company and this board, so that we might at least look at some alternatives. So I'd make that in the form of a motion and hope that I'd get a second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, and now there's a discussion of that. I was going to suggest that we perhaps have already a mechanism for looking at this issue, and that mechanism is our budget committee, which normally disbands and doesn't do anything until next year. But I was going to suggest that perhaps now is an appropriate time to keep that committee active
You get paid, we don't.
Yeah, I'll,
The buck is passing right now.
for the huge salary that we get, there are several people on the budget committee who delved deeply. Jay was one of them. You have a lot of expertise. Mary Neal has a lot of expertise in this area. And I
I
think
don't
we
have any
should,
expertise at all, I have some knowledge.
all right.
Pretend to know the ambulance.
We have some
I've had
knowledge.
a lot of
and-
medical care, but I still don't know
We have some
how it
knowledge
works.
and some background, Denise.
No, I just thought, I'm seriously, not to pass the buck, but that the selectman is an officer of the town, could call them,
I-
place, and I'm a nobody. I could pick up the phone and they don't know me from anybody. I have no authority whatsoever.
I'm happy. I'm just suggesting that we have a committee that has already looked into the groundwork of this, and it might make some sense to carry those people forward in this effort. That's
I'll
all.
make a deal with you. I'm the chairman of the budget committee, you're the chairman of the board of selectmen. Why don't we become a subcommittee of two and go at it together?
Sure.
All right.
I'll join that committee too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think-
Yeah, well, I voted already.
I think there are a lot of, I think there are a number of people in the community that if we were going to study this issue, which it does make sense to study it, that it would behoove us to get as
That's
many
my point.
people
I think so.
involved as possible.
I agree.
And your suggestion about, and this is my opinion now, your suggestion about talking to Delta, while it's a good one, I think the issue here is really much broader than that. I think the issue is, what are the different alternatives? I mean, we all need to face reality. Healthcare is going to change dramatically in the next decade. Things are not going to stay the same, but none of us have a crystal ball, so we don't know how it's going to change. So we just have to be prepared for that, and we have to be willing to accept some changes, and that sometimes is the hard part. But I think the group that we can hopefully get some people together to convene, and ideally including people from BRAS,
Yes.
could look at different alternatives.
I think it's essential, because I certainly learned a lot as we went through the budget process this year, and delved really into the very nuts and bolts. And while we say, well, Delta is providing so many runs at no cost, one thing I learned is there are runs and there are runs. There are some runs that are very expensive, there are some runs that are money-making, and so the ratio of those as a big swing item on how the company does economically. So you need to peel back the onion and not just look at the number of runs, but what type of runs, how far they're going, and all the details, as you did.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that for Delta to be able to make a fair apples and apples comparison, because I worry about making apples and oranges comparison.
Right.
Not only because of the type of runs, but also the geometry of our peninsula dominates how things work. We're not a closed set of nearby towns. We're a strung out succession of towns, and that impacts the costs as well. But I absolutely agree with your essential premise, which is let's not forget this and go forward. Let's study it and see what the alternatives are. I endorse that entirely.
I'm just saying, on one side you have a successful business, the other side you have a failure of business. Maybe you should talk with the successful one and find out how they do it.
Could be. So we have a motion in front of us. Any further discussion?
The motion is to speak only to Delta, as I understand it.
That's what I said, but I would be prepared to amend that motion to speak to other providers, because there are other
Yes.
other
Yeah,
than Delta.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I would expand the motion to encompass whomever seemed to be an appropriate ambulance service.
That would be-
So
I-
with that amendment,
The motion has been amended, and the second agrees with that?
Yeah.
Might I just add something here too, or are you still discussing it? This is more than just Boothbay Harbor too. I mean, you're talking a regional ambulance service. So whatever committee you're talking about putting together shouldn't be just us. So I would think you'd want to form that committee before you start inviting
That's what I
groups
was
down
just gonna
here.
say. I think we got the cart before the horse here.
perhaps, but I think that we have historically paid the biggest chunk of money for the ambulance service. And I think we're impacted. And as a board, at least this board could obtain information and then provide that information to the other boards involved.
What,
I think
Well,
it
yeah, it
gets kind
doesn't-
of unwieldy to work with too many towns, because there's certain issues that seem to be very parochial when it comes to that kind of thing. I would rather, from a Boothbay Harbor viewpoint, we know what we have to pay, and we know how many calls we generate. It would be worth just, I'm not saying that we should change, it would be interesting to know what the alternatives are. So then perhaps I would feel that we could go forward and talk to other communities and see if we could form a task force at that point. I hate to use that word, but that's what would be necessary, I think.
I think it's okay to go ahead and do some data collection. I don't have a problem with that, but I think we need to, if we're going to do this, we also need to put our heads together and think about how are we going to seriously come up with a group of people who can champion this for us.
I agree with that. I think we need to think about the structure of how we do this, and my first cut at it was to take the budget committee as the structure, but I understand the reasons. Perhaps we don't want to do that offhand. But I agree with you entirely. I think we need to think about the structure. So maybe we could do a couple of things. We could go ahead and vote on Bob's motion to investigate other, and don't let me put words in your mouth, Bob, but to investigate other ambulance services for their best practices and see how it goes. But I think there's also other action to codify exactly what this group is and how we're going to operate and how we interact with the other towns. And I might suggest that we come back at next meeting with having thought about that and having some proposals for how we might do that.
I'll table it until the next meeting. I'll table the motion
Okay.
with the approval of the board. But I think that this is something we shouldn't forget.
I don't think we'll be allowed to forget it, first of all, but I agree.
Please don't get so complicated in the beginning. All I want to do is find out some information.
Yeah.
If you want to share it with another town, fine, but for heaven's sake, don't get a Soviet Union collective mass movement going before you know what some simple facts are, that's all.
Yeah.
which towns use the service? Which towns use that service? Is it Boothbay Harbor, Southport?
Which service?
And
The current one, the one that we're discussing.
Newcastle or not? No,
No.
Newcastle CLC.
No.
No.
Edgecombe, Boothbay Harbor, Southport.
Yeah,
Right.
so four.
Four towns.
Okay.
So where do we stand?
Well, I'm prepared to table it on the basis that certainly we can make some, between now and then, we can make some alternative approaches. See if you could put together a committee, perhaps write some letters in the meantime. We have 2 weeks to do that, and see if somebody would like to come and talk to us.
Okay.
But I still think that I would want to leave that motion on the table.
I
I just don't want it to be forgotten, because we're dealing as a town with $195,000.
Yeah.
And that's a significant chunk of money.
Okay.
Well, let me give you an example, if I could. About 10, 12 years ago, they had a problem collecting money. A lot of people owed them money. And nobody did anything about it. I picked up the phone, I called Wiscasset. It was that simple. And the man that I talked to, this is a 10-minute telephone conversation, said we had a serious problem collecting a lot of our bills, and we hired a collection agency. And then the money started pouring in. That was exactly what he said. And the ambulance service, the man in charge at that time, said that he would go forward. The following town meeting, some 10 months later, he was asked, did you hire a collection service like you said? Well, no. Well, why? Gee, I don't know. That was pure information.
Yeah.
And they did hire him, and they did get some money in. It may not be working as well as it did in Wisconsin, but sometimes all it takes is a telephone call to get some information to go on,
Yeah.
rather than sit back and theorize something that may not exist. The ambulance service has a serious problem. I recognize it almost as much as they do, having taken part in
Yes.
their discussions. I know how difficult it is to recruit and train personnel, and I won't even get into that now.
Okay, so I believe where we are is with the agreement of the board that Bob's motion is tabled until next meeting. In the meantime, we will work.
Make it let's make it an agenda item
Yeah.
for the next meeting.
It will certainly be an agenda item for us to come with how to proceed. In the meantime, some calls and letters are entirely appropriate. And we'll start to draw on your database as well.
Okay.
All right. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
We are still in the public forum session. Anybody else?
At the risk of being full of hot air, one more item on town meeting. We went into an experiment a few years ago to have town meeting on Saturday morning in the hope of increasing the turnout of the public. It is the law of diminishing returns, to the extent that our most recent one, I believe we had 38 people from the public and about 24 facing across the table. I would seriously suggest that we return to the evening town meeting that we had before. I think that it would be available for more people, plus the fact that you would not be in this yearly competition with the road race that goes right through the most vital traffic part of the town and discourages a lot of people from driving. I would just ask you to think it over. Thank you.
Okay,
And I promise to keep quiet.
so noted.
That's the question I was just going to ask, and please think about it. Don't just say, yeah, okay, we'll think about it and leave it 2 weeks before the meeting and say, no, sorry, we can't do it. I'm with you. That's what I was just going to ask. Can we change that? Because there was many, many more people at the meeting then on a Friday night. And people do want to go and they can. I don't know who's in charge of that.
Town manager.
It's in our ordinance.
Okay.
No,
Our
that-
town meeting's in our
He
ordinance.
works for them.
Well, if it's in the ordinance and we wanted to change it, what would we need to do? Change the
Special
ordinance?
town meeting, yep.
Special town meeting to
Yeah.
change that first.
I mean, we
There's
run
a
into
whole
this every year,
process.
and I've asked Andy every year, could you just change the time? And no, okay.
Right.
So,
So we actually would need some discussion and thinking now, because we need to prepare for this like in the winter.
But you know,
At the
the number of people in the town, seriously, that say, can we go back to Friday night?
Yeah, I have lots of
It used to be pretty well attended.
Well,
Well, we
think
could
about
try
it,
it,
it
but
was a road race interference. It was a tradition in the town that had been going for some time, and there was no reason to say, well, hold your road race some other time. But I gave second thought about going to town meeting. Thinking, I don't want to drive through that mess.
We should have included it on the comprehensive survey.
I attended the Boothbay town meeting, and there were over 80 residents in attendance, so very lively.
Well, I think there were close to that for Edgecombe, and that was held on Saturday, and that's a smaller town, so.
Was the
I
Boothbay
don't-
meeting on
Monday night.
an evening?
night.
Monday.
It's Monday.
Up at the Railway Village.
How many people attended, Mike?
There were over 80 in the audience, and then staff.
And when was Boothbay Harbor in the evening? How long ago was that?
We used
Used to be Monday night.
A long time ago.
Long time ago?
you know, one thing that makes a big difference too, remember when I first got
Certainly
here,
before me.
It hasn't been in the last 10 years.
there were a lot of people at those meetings when I first got here because there was such controversy. Now,
Huh.
there's not an awful lot of controversy, so that attendance has come down tremendously.
So,
But you've seen how controversy fills a room.
so the process is to have an article at town meeting to move the time of town meeting. Is So unless we want to have a special town meeting, it's a 2-year evolution.
Yeah, right.
We do a vote?
Maybe we should take a little survey
I
in the next
think a
couple
s-
months.
I think a survey is the right thing to do, set up something, it's easy enough to do to set up on the web. Do a little survey and see,
I think we'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I
why don't we do that?
think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Good idea.
I wouldn't have a special town meeting go to all that expense, but if you have a special town meeting coming up for some other reason, you can put that in.
We may have
Well-
something with ordinance review, you know, for, like with what's happening with
Maybe.
an application before us this
Yeah.
week. May not change.
Well, I guess we could send out a mailer and see what came back. That would be one way to do it.
Facebook and the town website.
It's another way to do it, but not everybody uses Facebook.
Yeah, you get,
Well, not
Or
everybody's
both
gonna
ways.
answer every survey
You could
either,
just have a
so-
questionnaire at the
But-
front counter.
And
I was
everybody
wondering
comes
about
in,
that.
you make your
Yes.
walk.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
I think that'd be fine. It'd be,
We
it
can-
would just be some,
we could do that and do.
Information.
and do
What
the
will we
Facebook.
say would be fine, Ms. Griffin?
well, I think it would be interesting to get some Facebook information and some paper survey at the front counter.
Yeah, I would do both.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think either one is statistically significant, but it's data to look at.
Yeah,
I have no
You
idea.
can see a trend, you can see it, you know.
A
nobody-
trend.
Yeah, nobody cares at all.
Right.
It may just be us sitting in the room.
Well, I think
Right.
both ways would be good.
yeah,
Yeah.
so let's do both ways.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yep.
So you're seriously gonna think about it, right?
We're gonna seriously do a survey.
Okay.
So who makes that happen?
Get one vote.
Anybody else under public forum? You 2 for 2, Palmer.
Come on, Palmer, think of something else.
No. I promise.
Anybody
I'll
else?
stay out of this. I didn't mean to do.
Going
take up
once.
this time.
Going twice. The end of the first public forum. The next agenda item under unfinished business was the task force final report or final resolution. I got a call from Valerie about an hour before the meeting saying they were still looking for some final numbers and they had not yet signed it, and so she asked that we could put it off for a meeting. And so she is not here, and we will not be hearing that tonight, but we'll hear it at our next meeting, I presume. Under new business, I wanted to make the request that we've made every year of the selectmen to put together your top 3 items that you think we should focus on over the next year, and come prepared at the next meeting to talk about those. And 3 is a target. If you've really got 5 things that are near and dear to your heart, or only 2, that's okay as well. We've done this for the last few years, and I think it's a good exercise to help focus us on what's important and where we need to put our energies. And I know Denise, you had raised this issue as well.
And I think the ambulance study should go on the list.
The ambulance study is undoubtedly going to pop up on that list. For years, the fish pier has been on that list, and I'm glad to say that I think it's finally moving off. It
Yeah, that'd be
stands a
nice.
chance of moving off. We still have a lot to do, but I think we've turned the corner on that.
Took about 12 years for the communication center, but it finally
Yeah,
came
yeah.
to fruition.
But we have a number of challenges in front of us for this town. A lot of them are economic. A lot of them have to do with healthcare. And so trying to get some sense of priority and where we think we can be effective, I think would be a good thing. So unless anybody has any objection, I'd like to see that at the next meeting. I didn't have anything else. Anybody else? That brings us to the second public forum.
Like Tom Doe. Frank Jr. Would you entertain any submissions on your goals for the 2013-14 year from the audience, just to be shared?
Send me an email.
Okay.
Yeah,
Done.
yeah, you can reach all of us, I think.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else? Frank?
Frank Fassett, Boothbay Harbor. You and I spoke briefly about trying to do something about that undesignated donations that are given. And just if anything I can do to help you with that.
Just, Frank is raising the issue of, well, it really started with do the selectmen have a fund of modest means that they could allocate to otherwise unbudgeted things? And we talked about that at the beginning of the budget committee, of setting up
So
a fund.
discretionary
A
fund.
discretionary fund. And at the budget meetings, the discretionary fund was not viewed to be a good idea, so it did not come out of the budget committee. But what you and I talked about at town meeting was when gifts come in, they can be designated for a certain issue. And we could be proactive and encourage gifters to designate them for things that we think might be a good idea to spend money on that we otherwise had not budgeted for. I think that's the mechanism. And I think that's a reasonable approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my concern was if it comes in undesignated, we just have to throw it into the till and pay the light bill
Right,
with it.
right.
And the selectmen apparently don't have the ability to say, if somebody says, I don't care where you spend it,
I look back at the wording of the article, and it's not clear to me that we would not have the authority if they designated to say, well, we're going to designate it for this thing. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but the wording's a little ambiguous.
yeah, I guess I'd like to look into it, or have you look into it, or we can form a committee to look into it. And it just seems too bad to take it and throw it into the general fund.
But I think the right way to do it is if we're anticipating a gift or when we see a gift, go back to the gifter and say, we think this would be a good place to designate it. And that's how I would address it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Anybody else on the second public forum?
I have a quick question. You said, in response to Mr. Tomko's answer, that if someone had something you thought was important to the town, they could just shoot you an email.
Mhm.
Would you be upset with your email being printed?
No, my email's everywhere.
I want-
You have my email.
Only because I got it from the town email. I just wanted to make sure so I wouldn't say, you wouldn't
It's on
open
the
up the
website.
paper and go, oh,
Yeah.
no.
It's on the website.
Flood.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, wanted to make sure, thank you.
Yeah.
They'll get spammed.
I'll just change
Maybe I
it.
better just clear it.
Anybody else on the second public forum? Going once, going twice? We now have an executive session under MRSA Section 405-6A to discuss personnel matters. So I would ask that the audience clear the room.